Hey everyone, we're getting really close to Tesla's big Robotaxi event on October 10th, and the hype is real. It's super important to keep our expectations in check. Today, I want to break down what we can really expect, cut through some of the noise, and get a better idea of what's going on. But first, let's talk about some of that noise. You know how it goes, a quick Google search, and you'll see everything from wild predictions to doom and gloom takes. Fortune, for example, has a piece called Elon Musk is staking Tesla's very future on his October 10th Robotaxi unveil. I mean, really, come on, guys. Isn't that a little bit dramatic? Elon Musk isn't risking the whole company on one event. I mean, that's just not how Tesla works, right? They're involved in way too many industries for this to be an all or nothing deal. So, clickbait for real, just trying to promote the shorting of the stock. You see a lot of things online right now where they're just essentially telling people, hey, are you supposed to invest or short? Why is it always invest or short? Why not just, ride it long term? I don't know. So some folks point out that not every Tesla owner has full self-driving. Actually, only 15 to 30% of Tesla owners have full self-driving. That's roughly 400,000 cars. That might seem like a small percentage, but the numbers are climbing fast. So Sawyer Merritt reported that Tesla owners now are driving about 14.7 million miles per day on full self-driving. That's a 250% increase in just 3 months. It's not like full self-driving is some, niche thing anymore. Tesla is out there trying to promote the product. So yes, there is going to be a lot of hype building up around it, but again, it's not an all or nothing thing with the Robotaxi Day event. Remember the Cybertruck window smash reveal? Everyone thought that was a huge disaster, but look at the Cybertruck now, right? I mean, you have celebrities like Shaq, where they're just customizing their own trucks. Lots of people online, are polishing them, doing cool wraps and paint jobs. It's really already a cultural icon. On the flip side, there are some news sources that are taking a more grounded approach to this. So CNBC says Tesla could have a tough time living up to the hype around its Robotaxi event. Now, I do agree with this because Elon Musk does hype up things. I mean, look at his tweets, right? One for the history books. Huge deal. But keep in mind that that's kind of his job as CEO. Now, some CEOs don't necessarily focus too much on that aspect, but when you're looking at a company that doesn't pay anything for ads, it's super important to keep the products in the news, to keep the community really hyped up about this product. Now, Business Insider raises a few good questions. First, they say, who's going to own these robotaxis? So you can think about it this way. There are either the private ownership section where you would purchase a Tesla and enable a feature on it where it would go drive around for you and make money during the day, where it could pay for your lease, for instance, which is a really interesting concept. But a lot of people, I would think, are not going to want to let that happen, which is fine, But you could also think then, on the flip side, a lot of people are probably going to buy Tesla specifically for that fact if it is proven that you can make enough to pay off your lease and maybe make a little extra. But I think more realistically, initially, Tesla is going to build a fleet of its own vehicles. Keep in mind that Tesla doesn't have to sell these cars at a profit anymore. They can get them at, manufacturer price levels. So they're going to be able to get a lot of these vehicles out there really quickly. I think that they're going to focus mainly on big populated cities, similar to how Waymo is rolling out their system. But this is something that is far more impactful than the Waymo cars so far. I mean, think how many people have actually seen the Waymo vehicles in person, much less driven in one of them, or rather rode in one of them. And Tesla is going to probably deploy multiple times over that and reach the 100,000 rides per week far quicker than Waymo has. So we're going to take a look back at Waymo in just a second, but a more fundamental question is, full self-driving, is it ready for full autonomy? A lot of people watch a lot of videos online, heard a couple stories here or there. Oh, Tesla hits a bicyclist or something along the lines of that. Well, okay, so since they've done a end-to-end neural network instead of the 300,000 lines of static code, the ability of full self-driving has quickly increased. So version 12 is quite frankly insane. If you've never done a quick Google search, highly recommend you do. You can see it navigating complex environments. complex environments such as Chicago, such as Las Vegas during rush hour. Sure, there are an intervention here or there, but even some basic construction zones, it manages to get through just fine. Interventions have decreased dramatically. So based on what I've seen, it seems that Tesla can handle pretty much all normal driving scenarios, and even the ones that it can't handle, it's getting better at literally week by week, because they're releasing things every 2 weeks or less. It's quite insane. And you got to remember that you have like Model 3, Model S, but then you also have like the Cybertruck, full self-driving, things of that nature. So there's so many different things on their road plan, as you can see here, that within possibly even a year, I mean, we could see full self-driving be at the point where you're no longer even required to pay attention at all, because we just recently got an update about a month to 2 months ago where you no longer had to hold on to the wheel, which was huge because now it really truly feels like self-driving. And then less than a week ago, we just got an update that allows you to wear sunglasses, because initially, trying to make sure people were paying attention with sunglasses was difficult, but now, I mean, it works flawlessly. And they even tuned a little bit of the timing on when you look away, just to make sure that even if you just do a quick glance, it's okay. Like, you're probably just checking your phone or looking at the mirrors or something. Whereas initially when it released, it would start yelling at you, and you don't want to get flagged. So those are things that you have to take into consideration. So all in all, full self-driving, kind of mind-blowing. Definitely could see within a year it being able to be fully autonomous just in average Joe's cars. Now, it's probably going to use, obviously, like the same software as the Robotaxi is going to be used. I think that the personal vehicles like the Model 3, the Model S are going to be using the same software as the Robotaxi. But what is Tesla going to do in the meantime? What's the timeline for this? Okay, well, Waymo is a great example here, because they do have vehicles that are fully autonomous, that have a very, very high number of miles in between interventions. And so they gain that high number by geofencing the area that the Waymo taxis are able to operate within. So they lock them to a certain section of a city that they know has, not super complex obstacles, where they route them around construction, and that allows them to decrease the interventions dramatically and operate currently within the legal system. So the lawmakers are allowing Waymo to do this, and they're doing it quite successfully. Like I said earlier, over 100,000 trips a week, which is a huge deal. So if Tesla does something similar to this, I think their software is quite a bit more advanced than Waymo's anyway. So the geofencing, I don't think would have to be as strict. They could just geofence an entire city, like Chicago, just, the Chicago city portion itself, not the suburbs. And then they could essentially just have it route around construction, and you wouldn't really have a lot of issues per se. Obviously, some people have thought like, oh, well, what if in a certain situation it says, oh, I can't do it, and then it flags a remote driver? I mean, that's something that could be possible, but I don't think it's too likely. I think Tesla is going more for the fully autonomous, and I'm not really sure how they would handle situations where the Robotaxi would get completely frozen. Maybe they would have a teleoperator just to help it get through those situations, but they're going to want to put it in scenarios that they know are highly, highly likely to succeed. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, there's, of course, the question of regulatory issues. So is Tesla going to get regulatory approval for this? Well, I think if they do anything similar to how Waymo has the geofence system, yes, of course, they're going to get approval. It's not going to take them that long. For instance, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has been closely monitoring Tesla's autonomous vehicles. Full self-driving has improved dramatically. They keep decreasing miles in between, or increasing miles in between interventions. Now, of course, Europe is a whole other can of worms. They're basically, it feels like anti-innovation a lot of times, especially with AI. So I don't think we're going to see it within the next year there. But in 2022, Pew Research Center had a survey which said about 57% of Americans would feel uncomfortable riding in a driverless car, while only 12% felt very comfortable. So I think Tesla will need to convince both regulators and the public that their system is actually a not just life-saving technology, but something that can be used practically every day. Because even if laws are passed and allow Tesla to operate, if people aren't taking advantage of those situations, then they're not going to be successful in that. But I think that the track record of Tesla is a wow factor, despite not spending anything on advertising, and people will say, hey, I want to give it a shot, right? People aren't dying left and right, so let me check it out. And as that happens, they'll get their friends, and their friends will get their friends, and so on and so forth, and more people will be taking these. And if it's for a really good price, then I don't see that there's going to be a problem at all here. Now, it seems like Waymo has to retrofit these vehicles with all this expensive LiDAR technology, things of that nature, and Tesla is like, hey, I already got this production line. It produces a car every 13 seconds. We don't have to buy it for a profit, so we're actually able to get them at a very, very cheap price. Now, of course, the main question people have been speculating online is not about the regulatory approval. It's not about how good full self-driving is, although that's part of it. People have been going crazy about what the Robotaxi is going to look like. So you have a ton of concept designs on the internet right now. People saying, hey, I think it's going to look like this, and I think it's going to look like that. Now, to be fair, they all kind of, are around the same style. A little bit here, a little less there. Maybe they'll get it just accurate. But if we recall the Cybertruck, everyone had, basically really cool designs laid out. And the Cybertruck was unveiled, and people were at the events thinking, okay, so this is obviously a joke. When's the real one going to be unveiled? And they're like, no, this is the real deal. This is not a joke. So maybe all of the concepts are completely wrong. I don't think that's necessarily the case, because with the Cybertruck, we didn't really have much to go off of. But when it comes to the Robotaxi, we have Tesla with a history of, sedan vehicle designs. And we actually have a image from Walter Isaacson's biography of Elon Musk that's purportedly, rumored, supposedly, however you want to put it, Robotaxi. So this shape, though, actually kind of corresponds to a lot of the concepts. Now, that makes sense, though, because the concepts are clearly probably drawn from that. But interestingly, since Elon Musk's having the Robotaxi event at the Warner Brothers Studios, there have been a lot of people watching that facility, and there was a camouflaged, apparently Tesla vehicle, it looks like a Tesla vehicle, that was located and taken a picture of. So this vehicle looks very, very similar, actually, to a lot of the concepts. Now, at first you might say, no, it doesn't, but you can clearly tell that the camouflage on there makes it look a little boxy. You cut a couple lines off here or there. You get something that honestly really does look like a lot of the concepts. Now, the one thing that I find interesting, though, is a lot of the concepts have essentially 2 seats in them. Maybe 4 if you have reversal seats in the front, but I don't see that in a lot of the images. And I just can't think that Tesla would make a Robotaxi that could only fit 2 people. That would be extremely limited, especially, you and your friends want to go somewhere. Oh, well, now you can't take a taxi, or maybe you have to take 2 Robotaxis. It doesn't seem like that's going to be something. So maybe they'll have rear-facing seats. That seems like a pretty good option, in my opinion. But a lot of these concepts don't really take that into consideration. But we know, they definitely have the ability to make a car that's longer than a lot of these concepts kind of let on. So think of like a Model 3 or a Model Y size vehicle. Now, going along with the theme of event preparation, Tesla is putting a ton of work and effort into making sure this goes extremely well for them. So if we look at some of the reports that they're already actually using LiDAR, which doesn't even ship on their vehicles, to map the layout of the facilities. And of course, they're doing this to build up a 3D model to then run their AI on, probably in simulations, and then in reality run it on there, just to make sure that this is a good public image for them when they have this event. This is a huge deal. Obviously, Elon's been hyping it up. So if you can imagine something like the Cybertruck event where the window was broken happening here, well, okay, not a huge deal for the Cybertruck. A lot of notoriety, a lot of media coverage. But if you compare that to something here like, oh, the vehicle didn't stop when someone was crossing the road, that's dangerous. Well, people probably aren't going to want to get in the vehicle or get around these, or regulators aren't going to want to approve them. So it's super important that they demonstrate that the product is very consistent, reliable and safe at getting you from point A to point B. So putting this all together, what can we really expect from the October 11th event? I think that it's going to be a new paradigm for robotaxis, potentially showcasing a model that can be used both in private and fleet operations. So that's a robotaxi feature that your car could have, but also that the fleet uses, and they all work together to get people from point A to point B. And I think that they're going to demonstrate the safety. They're going to give people rides in these vehicles. That's a given, right? Just letting people experience this technology that will most likely be extremely revolutionary. Now, keep in mind though, a lot of people aren't mentioning this, but it's an unveil event. It's a reveal event. So it's not a product shipping date. That's important to keep in mind because even though there's a ton of hype around it, and yes, it's going to be a huge deal, Elon Musk has, let's just say, notorious issues with meeting deadlines. So I think that when they unveil this, they're going to say, hey, 6 months to a year. I think that's reasonable, probably closer to the year line, maybe even late 2025 into 2026. But I think at that point, at least in the US, we would see these rolling out on a pretty big level. Because if you compare that to where full self-driving itself is at right now, I think if most people would say that within a year, it's going to be able to handle basically all situations and not really have any issues, except for the most extreme, odd situations that you might run into. I also think that this is going to be a huge moment for the industry at large for self-driving because while it's been around for a while and people talk about it here or there, there's not a lot of events that focus solely on this. So you can think like, well, you got Super Cruise, you got Blue Cruise, you got full self-driving, you got Mercedes Advanced Assist, but people don't go around talking about these every day unless you're in these, niche YouTube communities. So something on the scale of a Tesla event that's been hyped up for months, dedicated specifically to ultimately full self-driving, because that's how the Robotaxi works, is going to put this on the forefront of people's minds. People are going to be looking at a lot of statistics on safety, on is it able to get me from point A to point B without any interventions, and push the industry to catch up. Because if Tesla can display a product that is reliable and safe, then a lot of the other companies in the industry are going to want to take a chunk of that pie, else they'll feel left behind. And that's not something you want to feel, especially when you're dealing with Tesla. That's something that the historical legacy car makers have learned quite well. You don't mess around with Tesla. You don't let them get the advantage, because if you do, they will keep it and they will run all over you. I mean, the Model Y is about to be the most best-selling vehicle in the US by statistics, beating the Ford F-150 and falling, I believe it's like right behind the RAV4. There might be one other one in there, but like people, hate on Tesla, and it's like, hey, I mean, they're selling their vehicle, the Model Y, is almost the number one selling vehicle in the US. So you might want to hate on them, but like reality, let's look at the statistics and let's see where they're at. It's going to be a big deal. I'm excited for October 10th, and I hope you are too. I guess we'll see how accurate these predictions are, but I don't think they're too far off from what we can expect on October 10th.